Welcome to Good Life. I'm Dean Wilson. Thanks for joining us. You can always find us at goodlifetelevision.org. There's a lot of interviews, a lot of great interviews on there. A lot of inspirational stories, true stories of overcoming, of excellence, of impact, nonprofit leaders, public servants, elected officials, famous people, not famous people, young people, old people, everything. Goodlifetelevision.org. And then we also have power clips on that you can find. So if you don't want to watch the full interview, you just kind of want to watch some of the highlights, you can watch those power clips. I think you'll really enjoy it. So excited about my guests today. Douglas and Spencer Doman are with me. Welcome. Douglas is the president. Spencer is the CEO of Doman International. So it's Doman, D-O-M-A-N, International. Their website is domaninternational.org. The sponsor of this program, the Turner Foundation here in California, has a partnership with Doman International. They're located in Philadelphia to help families with special needs children. You'll hear why in a minute and how. But this is a wonderful, exciting partnership between the Turner Foundation and Doman International to see as many families get help, get answers, get a roadmap for how they can help their special needs child as possible. So that's why we're here. We wanted you to meet them and hear from them, and so thanks for coming. Thanks for coming all the way from Philadelphia. So Douglas, let's start with kind of just a history of the family and the work that you all have been involved in. Professionally, you've been doing this for 45 years, Spencer for 15, but to kind of take us back to the beginning in terms of the work and Glenn Doman and his kind of pioneering work.
When my father began the work in the 1950s with his great mentor, the genius Dr. Temple Fay, the great neurosurgeon, who was an expert, obviously, in brain growth and development. Their objective back in the 1950s, when these children were considered hopeless and helpless, and just to mention how bad the world was back then, there were 3 typical medical diagnoses for special needs children. And all special needs children were classified in those days into these 3 diagnoses. They were diagnosed as either, this is the truth, this is not being made up now. They were classified as idiots, imbeciles, or morons. So all special needs children fell into one of those 3 categories. And so parents were told, sorry, but your child was a moron. And of course, the parents wouldn't accept it from get-go. They knew that it wasn't true. They knew that their child wasn't a moron. And you say to the mother of a special needs child, how do you know that your child is intelligent? And the mother says, look in his eyes. And you look in his eyes and you can see there is an intelligent person in there. And this can be at 2 months of age, 6 months of age, 12 months of age, and beyond. Now, every once in a while, a mother will say, look in his eyes. And it seems that there is nobody home. So those children are profoundly brain injured. We have seen thousands of them. And of course, as part of our treatment, where we have learned to grow the visual pathway into the brain, the auditory pathway into the brain, the tactile pathway into the brain, we can then see that intelligence, pop into their eyes. So parents weren't buying the idiot, imbecile, or moron. And it took a long time for the medical people to catch on. So what did they do? They made a new term, mental retardation. And of course, that has been totally unacceptable to parents. It was unacceptable to my father from the get-go, because it is a lie in and of itself when there is that innate intelligence that you can see in the child's eyes. And of course, everybody knows, what does mentally retarded mean? it means you're an idiot, imbecile, or moron.
Right.
So we're right back to where we are, and it's a great lie because of all of our programs for brain growth and development. Certainly our most cognitive programs are our most successful. It's typical that we can get 3-year-old cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, autistic children reading by 3 years of age, where the average child, if he's lucky, maybe he'll do it at 6 years of age. This is typical for us, showing the intelligence that these children have.
Wow.
Well, you know, it started back in the 1950s. Now we've seen more than 30,000 parents, and these are families that we have worked shoulder to shoulder with, as you know, and they have come from more than 100 countries around the world, 6 continents, and so we have this very long history now with thousands and thousands of parents where we know the potential of the children is incredible. And the burden that I carry every day, and all of us do at Doman International, to have this technology, which is capable of making special needs children not average. It was my father's, their goal in the 1950s was for all the children, for them to see that they would become well. And by well, that means just like your other children, no different, going to school with well children of the same age and competing successfully with those children. That was the goal in the 1950s. That was considered wildly radical, that anyone could propose that any mentally retarded child would have a shot at becoming well. Well, now we have proven, our parents have proven, with hundreds of children that we've graduated to wellness, that we can do it. And the children that we've graduated have been, you know, from all the different diagnoses. There isn't any group of kids that haven't succeeded, showing us that whether it's cerebral palsy, epilepsy, failure to thrive, premature birth, we've seen children in all those categories thrive and prosper.
Wow. I want to talk to Spencer. I'd love you to touch on
Doman International and kind of what happens. So these children, these parents bring their children from all over the world with 100 different diagnoses. They're often asking the question, like we were. I'm a parent of a special needs child. 17 years ago, we darkened the door with you all, and the question on our mind was probably the question on the mind of a lot of parents was, what do we do now?
Right.
You know, you're looking for answers, you're looking for hope, you're looking for, how can we help our child? You know, do we just going to sit here and stare at them for the next 20 years? I mean, while they do nothing? Because our daughter wasn't developing at all. So they walk in the door. Spencer, walk through kind of what happens when they get there and how this works.
Well, even before they come to us, like to come to one of our clinics, we actually start to teach parents online. So we have an online Doman method course from special needs to wellness, where we teach parents how to start using the Doman method with their child with special needs at home. And we start to teach the parents a step-by-step approach, a program that they can use at home to help their children in every area of development. And this online course has been a wonderful way for us to help families all around the world. In our last course, I think we had parents from over 15 different countries, from the US, Europe, the Middle East, Asia, South America, all around.
New Zealand,
yeah. Basically every continent is represented, and that's because of modern technology allows us to now impart the knowledge to parents that they used to have to fly across the world just to be in the same room with us.
Right.
And so that allows parents to start almost instantaneously helping their child. And then after attending that course, many parents often they choose to bring their children to one of our worldwide locations. We have a clinic in Philadelphia. We have a center in Italy. We see children in India, in Russia, in Serbia. So we have select places around the world where we see families to make the travel a little less burdensome for the families.
Right.
And so we see the children, we evaluate the children, and our staff, our team designs a specific treatment program for that child based on their needs to help them reach their fullest potential in every area of development. So it could be speech development, physical development, cognitive development, their health. So we look at, it's a holistic approach to treating the child.
I read this sentence on your website that I thought was amazing. We empower families to accomplish the impossible, and that's so powerful. And I resonated with it as a dad with a special needs child who's been through your program, and it changed our life. And I'll tell that story in another day. But it changed our life. It changed our daughter's life. It changed our family's life. It was hopeful. And that sentence about you empowering the parents to accomplish the impossible. It does seem impossible. It does seem impossible. That's not the wrong word. It seems impossible. And the idea that you could be mobile when you've been immobile, that you could see when you haven't seen, that you could, it seems impossible. I mean, and yet we've seen it happen. You've seen it happen 1,000 times. We've seen it happen once. Big deal. Life-changing for families. And it is a holistic, you mentioned the word holistic, it is a holistic approach. And I just want to give people a flavor for this, for the parents, because it was eye-opening for me. We learned all about the brain, and then you gave us a program. This is everything from nutrition and every single thing that is going in that body that is eaten or, drink. It's from nutrition to breathing. Not a lot of people think about breathing, respiration. I didn't wake up this morning and think, I hope I breathe well today.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we just kind of breathe. Breathing is so important. So let's stop there maybe and kind of just talk about a little bit, either one of you, on the holistic approach and nutrition and respiration as part of this program.
Yeah, well, we have a physical program, which basically is mobility development. We have a cognitive program, which is basically intellectual development, language, writing. We have a nutrition program. We have a series of different programs that develop respiration, and then we have social programs as well. So everything is included in the child's development, with the exception of spirituality. And of course, our parents come from all over the world, so our parents, add that,
Right.
which is a key ingredient,
Right.
and that creates the hope and the vision of knowing this child does have the ability to get well.
Right.
So that's our holistic program, and it's integrative in that. My father, in the book What to Do About Your Brain Injured Child, talks about different areas of brain function, such as the ability to see, hear, feel, to be able to move, to be able to talk, to be able to move one's hands. And there are particular parts of the brain that are responsible for these functions, and the job of our program is to develop those areas of the brain. Well, if you develop any particular area, like you improve mobility, as he says, like a series of weights that are all chained together. If you pick up one weight with the chain, it picks up the other areas at the same time. So that is the results come from all the programs together, which are much greater than the individual programs.
Huh. That's interesting.
No.
By the way, we're not giving any medical advice, but you have doctors.
Yes,
I mean, so
we have
doctors are very much a part of this.
We have a fabulous medical staff
Yeah.
all over the world. Pediatricians, wonderfully dedicated people,
Right.
out of the box doctors,
Right.
and so we're very blessed in that regard. That
So anyway, continue, but I wanted to just clarify that.
The human brain basically can receive information through 5 sensory pathways, right? So everything that you learn, I learn, or a child with special needs can learn comes through the 5 sensory pathways. Our ability to see, hear, feel, taste, and smell, right? And these are 5 highways basically that go into the brain. And so we use those 5 pathways to stimulate the brain, because that's how the brain develops, right? That's how we can achieve neuroplasticity, which is, the brain has this ability to change and heal if you do certain kinds of stimulation, the right kinds of stimulation or the right kinds of activities. With great repetition, yeah.
You know all about that.
Exactly. And so if we had to boil it down very simply, we give a lot of sensory stimulation with a lot of frequency, intensity, and duration. And so by using these different pathways into the brain, we can improve the way the brain works. And then the brain is the command center of the body, right? So if the brain improves, if the brain functions better, the symptoms that the child with special needs is facing starts to go away, right? So maybe that child has speech problems when they start, maybe they can't walk, maybe they can't see, but if we can improve that brain function, the child can start to talk, start to walk, start to see.
Another, I'm just remembering, I'm having flashbacks of my time in that auditorium, which, by the way, you kept the auditorium at it seemed like 42 degrees, but I know you keep the auditorium cold.
68. And,
68. That's the temperature.
My father developed that, half a century ago, and it was based on research that NASA did with astronauts, where they put astronauts in spacesuits and put them at certain temperatures, and gave them cognitive tests, and found that they did much better in a cool spacesuit around 68 degrees, which feels like right.
Yeah, that's why I didn't do well in Texas.
Yeah.
I was melting. I was melting the entire. I couldn't function. So we'll blame it on the weather. Yeah. But one of the so I'm getting flashbacks of the things we learned. But one of the terms one of the phrases was, "The brain grows by use," and the idea that training, is it kind of like training the brain, for a child that is brain injured, when that newborn's on the floor, they're not moving. Let's say that's a cerebral palsy or whatever you want to diagnose, this midbrain injury where it affects mobility, right? So that child is not going to move. The well child over here is going to naturally start doing certain things, from creeping to crawling to standing to walking. This child needs help to do that, right? Am I explaining this right? I'm trying to give this to the layperson. Well child is going to do it naturally. This child with this injury needs help, elaborate on that.
So their brain injury acts as a barrier, right? It acts as a barrier to allow information in, and that can make it more difficult for them to maybe learn from the environment, but it can also act as a barrier in terms of stopping them from doing something that, like you said, another child, a well child, may do naturally. And so in many ways, the Doman method is focused on making these things easier for the child, right? The stimulation that we're doing, we're trying to make seeing, hearing, feeling easier. In terms of movement, trying to make it as easy as possible for the child to move, and to move in a step-by-step way, right? To get a child who cannot move, to get them crawling, creeping, walking, running. So following the same,
in the right order.
That's right.
The well child does it.
Exactly. In the same way, that an average child would. But we've designed treatment programs, different kinds of equipment, different kinds of stimulation that can help us achieve those abilities faster.
So back in the 50s, when my father and his initial team decided their objective was that all special needs children should become completely well as their objective, their reason for being, first he had to know what a well child was, if that was what he was going to recreate. Right. So he studied child development with well children, and that led to the creation of the developmental profile, which he talks about in the book, What to Do About Your Brain Injured Child Again. And the developmental profile, my father said that if our work and the Doman method is remembered 500 years from now, it will be because of that developmental profile, which we now teach parents to use the developmental profile in order to diagnose their children the severity of the child's injury, where the injury is in the brain. And the beauty of the developmental profile is it's also a step out. So if your child is here in vision, the profile says this is the next step for your child. So our job is to then create a program to get that child to that next step. And of course, it does the same in terms of mobility. Your child's here in mobility. Now we need to get him to the next level.
Right.
And this is the program to get there. So that's what we've been doing for the last 60 years, filling in all the blanks as to what is necessary for a child to go from blind. Children come to us, they're blind, they're deaf, they're insensate, they're immobile, they're paralyzed, they can't speak, they can't use their hands at all in the most profound cases. And even beyond that, a coma is the most profound form of brain injury. Right. And so my father developed a coma arousal team back in the 1960s where people who are in coma can be brought out of the coma. And research has been done that my father and his some of the medical staff did, published scientific articles showing that people who were in coma on our coma arousal program, such and such a percent got completely out of coma, all the way back to those, which was a significant number that went back to work.
Wow. And that's spectrum. I remember that too, from kind of wellness to coma, slight brain injuries to, all the way up. So, maybe dyslexia, ADD, those kinds of things are probably on this end. Learning difficulties.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then we have cerebral palsy and Down syndrome and all these different diagnoses.
Autism, developmental delay. Yeah.
All the way to coma. Mm-hmm. And your experience and results show that people can move that way, that people can move toward wellness. And that's incredibly hopeful. I remember learning about the brain in your auditorium, and I never thought, why do 30% of kids in a classroom have glasses? Right? I would have thought that's a problem with their eyeball. That's what probably everybody thinks. But you said, it's actually most of us have a brain injury of some degree when we come down the chute, right?
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah, well, in terms of vision, there are two kinds of blindness. There's the blindness where there's something wrong with the eyeball itself. So this is a peripheral problem, meaning it's outside the central nervous system. And unfortunately, our work can't do anything about that. There are experts in that area, but behind the eye, there is the optic nerve, which is part of the central nervous system. And for the hundreds and hundreds of children that have come to us blind, that we've gotten them seeing, we developed that pathway into the brain. The visual pathway is a one-way street into the brain. Grown that pathway, and then like a train, an express train, just putting more and more information into the brain until the pathway is created and the child is reading. So many of those children who came to us blind end up reading. So they may come to us at 2 blind, and we may get them reading by the time they're 3.5. So they went from being way, way below average blind to being way, way above average because they're 3.5 and they're reading, and average kids don't do that until they're 6. So, that is just one typical example of the brain's incredible ability to grow and develop.
That's amazing. My wife, Susan, who's been the key person in our family to do.
You mean the angel in your family?
The angel, yeah. When we get to heaven, I'm going to say I'm with her. She's given her life for 17 years to 19 years, but 17 years I'm really doing the program to Eau Claire. And she talked about you guys. I asked her last night, I showed her my questions. I said, well, give me some thoughts. And she said, well, I just love how the Doman International, it's all in one place for Eau Claire. They know everything about her. Because with a typical family, I think you've got this doctor, this specialist, this guy, therapist, physical therapist, occupational therapist, and it's just confusing and it's a maze.
And Dean, I don't know if you realize it, but you're just now talking about the typical life of an American special needs child. The mother is a chauffeur taking the child from one thing to another thing. Right. Our job is get her out of the car, keep her home, empower her
what to do.
So she becomes the best therapist for that child.
Right.
And as you know, our mothers do that.
Yes.
And they get to the point where nobody is going to tell them what to do about their child. They know what to do with their child.
Right.
They're the
Which
ones.
makes sense.
They're the captains. They're in the driver's seat.
And I often tell parents that one of the most powerful things about coming for an appointment with Doman International is actually something that parents don't witness, and that is after we evaluate the child, our team meets. The entire team meets and discusses the child's case. And so we'll have 15 professionals, all from different backgrounds. So we have educators and doctors and nutritionists all looking at this one child's case. And I don't think there's anything like that anywhere else in the world. Most parents are going, maybe they're going to the physical therapist once a week and they're going to a speech therapist and an occupational therapist. But there's no group of people really looking out for that child and collaborating to do what's best for that kid.
Right. It makes perfect sense. I mean, it's genius.
And the beauty of what we've developed in recent times is, and now with Zoom and Google Hangout, we've got our entire team on 4 different continents sometimes, all right there with us. Some of them just gotten up in the morning too early, others staying up too late at night. We're all focusing on that child to take our experience and give it to the best that we can to that kid.
It's amazing.
And we get into fights sometimes, in terms of what we think is going to be best for that kid, and we have to, in the end, work it out.
Well, it's just my wife loves that she has one phone number. Elle Claire looks like she's having a tremor or something's wrong, whatever it is. She's going to call you guys before she calls. I mean, that's the first phone call. Is, hey, what are your thoughts? And again, we have doctors. We're not everybody's. You have doctors. We have doctors. Doctors are wonderful. But in terms of a quarterback of this whole plan, for a special needs parent to have you guys to call who know every single thing about our daughter is so amazing. So I just wanted to mention that.
And one of the things that I'm proudest about in terms of supporting parents is that parents are on our advanced program. These are parents who have taken our initial course, our online course, and then come to see us. Now, of course, we have centers around the world and we prefer to see the child live, but we've learned in 2020 that we have to be prepared to adapt. When we can't go to our parents or our parents can't come to us, we now have this entire process that can also be done online. But every child on the advanced program has a staff coach, and from the first time that they take the course, they're assigned their staff coach based on the fact that we've seen this child, the child's background, we've seen the child's diagnosis. We determine which of the staff members are best to coach that person, and we have staff fighting sometimes when we've met
over a kid.
Mothers in the course who we know are incredible mothers,
right.
Or kids that we want that kid, and then that staff coach, the parents have 24/7. I mean, they can call as many times as they wish. They can email, text us, so that they know. And we have a policy that our staff coaches get back to our parents within a 48-hour period or less, and I'm happy. I receive statistics every week. We have the staff, usually averages 350 contacts with our families around the world in a 7-day period, and their average is in less than 24 hours, which is the way it needs to be. I mean, we're empowering the mother. She is running the ship, but she needs help and support when she has questions or problems that arise.
It's so good. Another thing I remember, and just part of my experience, was the idea. When Ella Claire was 2, she's profound, she'd be diagnosed with cerebral palsy. She had a stroke in the womb. And, we started and she was not developing and getting worse and getting more rigid. For example, some kids are going to get more rigid over time. They tighten up. And I would have thought the problem was in the hand. I would have thought the problem is we need to, and when we came to you all and you said, the problem's in the brain. We got to treat this at the brain level. Yeah. And that was also eye-opening, that this wasn't a series of this. It's amazing because what you guys know and do is so incredibly complex in the brain, but it's so simple.
It's so simple.
I mean, what is the reaction that this we only have a couple minutes, but what's the reaction you guys see with parents when they come in to kind of when they go out? Talk about that.
I would say relief would be one of the first things. I spoke actually to a mother just a couple of nights ago who connected me through a family on the program, and she has a 5-month-old, but she's started to realize, she started to see herself that her child is having visual issues and auditory issues. And so on the one hand, I could hear in her voice a lot of worry about her baby, but I could also see that she's got that warrior spirit. She's going to do whatever she needs to do for her kid. And so just talking to her a bit about, okay, let's get started with these things with her child. I could hear by the end of the phone call relief. And I think when parents come to our course, when they come to appointments, you can see that a bit of weight has been lifted off their shoulders. They feel a lot better.
And this might be the last topic we have time for, but one of the foundational principles of your father and your work has been that you never give up on any child, and that you don't leave the wounded behind, as Glenn Doman learned in combat. Sometimes I'm amazed at what you guys must see. I remember being in the clinic. I mean, it is the walking wounded. In that we'd be in this clinic room, people from all over the world. I remember a Russian. It seemed like a grandparent, but maybe it was a mother, carrying her child who was not small, literally carrying this child into the clinic. I remember Andrew, who had the swimming pool accident, or I don't know what happened, and he was completely rigid, laying on the ground, 17 years old or whatever he was. All he could do was blink. I mean, I remember sitting next to them, these parents from Missouri, I think they were from St. Louis, and they got a special built van and they made the trek from St. Louis to Philadelphia to see what they could do to help this stiff, rigid, that everybody else would have given up on. I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, how do you do that? I mean, how do you see these incredibly difficult cases and find a way to give hope, find a way to believe for what is possible? Talk about that.
Well, after 30,000 kids with every kind of, special need diagnoses, we really have seen it all. And, parents often come to us and they have the great fear, is my child the most rigid child you've ever seen? Right. Is my child the most blind child you've seen? And the answer is no. And we're looking at that kid and thinking that kid is an Olympic champion compared to such and such another child. So it's very rare, and personally, I can't even think of a champion. The last time I thought this, kid is a champion. So it just shows, and also the world has changed in that, that medicine has not caught up to us, and conventional treatment has not caught up to us, is a great concern because the parents suffer for that reason. But on the other hand, medicine has improved incredibly, where children who would have died 10, 20, 30 years ago now survive because of the medical intervention, and that's wonderful. Often these are the most hurt kids that we see, but it seems like the good Lord says, no rest, no rest. We got to keep going to to make better and better methods so the kids get better quicker, faster, and easier.
So you've seen everything. I mean, there's pretty much nothing you haven't seen. And I think one point of clarity for people who are watching this, we keep using the term brain injury or a child with a brain injury. Brain injury is kind of an umbrella term, isn't it, over all these diagnoses. I mean, so from coma to dyslexia or whatever it is, learning difficulties, all these are just one form of brain injury, aren't they?
Yeah, they're all, all of these children, whether they've been diagnosed with autism, ADD, cerebral palsy, cortical blindness, there's so many different diagnoses given to kids with special needs. All of them have a neurodevelopmental condition. Their development has been impacted because there's something not right with their brain development, right? And this is a result of a brain injury. It might have taken place during pregnancy, right, or during birth or after birth, but the brain's function was impacted, was affected by a brain injury. And so our program is focused on improving how the brain functions, and so all of these kids can be helped.
Huge question, which we really need to go into in more detail.
We will in another show. Thank you both, Douglas and Spencer Doman, President and CEO of Doman International. Again, if you have a brain-injured child or grandchild, if their child's not developing on track, if your neighbor has a child in a wheelchair that you see, that check out domaninternational.org is my encouragement. I'm an actual case. Our daughter, like I mentioned, we've been on the program for a long time, and it has been incredible what's happened as a result, and that story's for another program also. But I will say I highly encourage you to check out domaninternational.org, get a hold of these folks, or have your neighbor or friend, whoever has a special needs child, get a hold of these folks, because it could be life-changing. Thank you, gentlemen.
Oh, thank you so much.
Awesome. We'll see you next time.